For centuries, Italy was less a country than a beautiful argument written across mountains, rivers, ports, palaces, churches, and battlefields. Long before one flag rose above Rome, the peninsula had been a prize, a stage, and a wound. Its cities were rich, proud, and jealous of one another. Florence dreamed in art and banking, Venice ruled the sea with merchants and ships, Milan guarded the northern plains like a fortress, Naples looked south across the Mediterranean, and Rome carried the memory of empire while living under the authority of the Pope. The people spoke related tongues, prayed in the same ancient churches, traded in the same markets, and remembered the same Roman past. Yet most did not wake each morning thinking of themselves as Italians. They were Venetians, Sicilians, Tuscans, Lombards, Piedmontese, Romans. Their loyalty belonged first to their city, their duke, their village, their trade, their family, and their local saints. That division made Italy brilliant, but it also made Italy vulnerable. When France marched across the Alps, when Spain reached for Naples and Milan, when the Holy Roman Empire pushed its armies into the plains, Italian states often fought each other as fiercely as they fought the invader. Some even welcomed foreign soldiers if those soldiers promised advantage over a rival city. The peninsula became one of Europe's great prizes, a land where outside kings tested ambition and where local rulers survived by bargaining with stronger powers. Then came the Renaissance, and Italy gave Europe a new language of beauty, power, science, and political thought. Dante imagined a shared cultural soul before a shared state existed. Machiavelli studied power with cold honesty and asked why Italy remained prey to foreign armies. Artists, poets, soldiers, bankers, and princes filled the world with splendor, but splendor was not unity. As the Atlantic powers grew rich from overseas empires, the old glory of Venice and Florence began to fade. Spain, France, Britain, and the Dutch Republic looked outward across oceans, while Italy remained divided under old dynasties, foreign governors, and fragile local governments. For many ordinary people, life changed slowly. Taxes were heavy, roads were poor, harvests were uncertain, and politics belonged to nobles, priests, and foreign officials. Yet beneath the calm surface, history was preparing a storm. The French Revolution of 1789 shook Europe by declaring that nations and citizens mattered more than kings by divine right. When Napoleon Bonaparte crossed into Italy, he did not merely bring armies. He brought new laws, new maps, new taxes, new opportunities, and new anger. He reorganized territories, weakened old rulers, and showed many educated Italians what a centralized modern state could do. Some hated French rule because it demanded soldiers and money. Others benefited from it and learned that government could build roads, regulate courts, and connect markets. When Napoleon fell, many celebrated the end of war, hoping the old world would return quietly. But the old world could not return unchanged. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 restored kings, dukes, and Austrian influence, yet it could not erase the memory of administration, reform, and national language. Lombardy and Venetia came under Austrian control. Naples and Sicily returned to Bourbon rule. The Papal States remained under the Pope. Tuscany, Parma, Modena, and other duchies resumed their separate lives. Piedmont Sardinia, ruled by the House of Savoy, stood in the northwest as one of the few Italian states with enough military strength to matter. Over the next decades, secret societies, students, officers, writers, and merchants began to whisper a dangerous idea. Italy should no longer be a collection of possessions for others. Italy should be one nation. This dream had many faces. Giuseppe Mazzini gave it a soul. From exile, after being driven from Genoa and Piedmont, he wrote with the fire of a prophet. To him, Italy was not merely a political project. It was a moral mission. He imagined a republic of citizens, not a kingdom arranged by diplomats. He believed young people had a sacred duty to awaken the nation. His words crossed borders more easily than armies, inspiring radicals, students, and patriots who were willing to risk prison and death for a country that did not yet exist. But dreams alone could not defeat Austria. Italy also needed patience, diplomacy, money, railways, newspapers, and a government strong enough to play the game of Europe. That role fell to Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour, the Prime Minister of Piedmont, Sardinia. Cavour was not a romantic revolutionary. He was practical, calculating, modern, and often ruthless. He understood that Italy could not be united by speeches alone. Austria had to be weakened, France had to be tempted, Britain had to be reassured, and Piedmont had to become the engine of unification. While Mazzini spoke of destiny, Cavour spoke the language of treaties, loans, armies, newspapers, and railroads. Then there was Giuseppe Garibaldi, the man who turned legend into movement. He had fought abroad, lived roughly, wore the red shirt of a volunteer soldier, and carried himself with the simplicity of someone who preferred action to ceremony. He distrusted politicians and cared little for luxury. He could sleep on straw even when palaces opened their doors to him. Ordinary people saw in him not a minister, but a hero who could ride into danger and make history visible. These three men did not truly trust one another. Mazzini wanted a republic. Cavour wanted a constitutional kingdom under Piedmont's leadership. Garibaldi admired liberty but often acted by instinct, force, and personal loyalty. Yet history sometimes uses rivals to build the same bridge. In 1848, revolution exploded across Europe. Paris rose again, and the shock traveled like lightning. In Milan, people fought Austrian authority in the famous 5 days. Venice declared itself free. Across the peninsula, old regimes trembled. Charles Albert, King of Piedmont, Sardinia, saw both danger and opportunity. He declared war on Austria, beginning the First Italian War of Independence. For a moment, it seemed the dream had become real. Flags appeared, volunteers marched, crowds cheered, and patriots believed that the age of foreign rule was ending. But enthusiasm was not enough. The Italian states were divided, armies were poorly coordinated, and local ambitions weakened the common cause. Naples withdrew support. Suspicion grew between Milanese revolutionaries and Piedmontese commanders. Austria, disciplined and experienced, struck back. Charles Albert was defeated and forced to abdicate in favor of his son, Victor Emmanuel II. Piedmont paid dearly, yet it survived, and that mattered. In defeat, it preserved a constitution, an army, and a reputation as the one Italian state that had dared to challenge Austria openly. The lesson of 1848 was painful. Italy could not be born through scattered uprisings alone. It needed international strategy. Cavour understood this better than anyone. He strengthened Piedmont, encouraged economic development, improved railways, and placed the kingdom within European diplomacy. He even sent Piedmontese troops to the Crimean War, not because Crimea was Italy's concern, but because it earned Piedmont a seat among the great powers. At the Congress of Paris, Cavour raised the Italian question before Europe. Then he looked to France. Napoleon III, Emperor of the French, carried his uncle's name and his own ambitions. He was willing to support Piedmont against Austria if the price and risk were acceptable. In 1858, secret arrangements prepared the way. Cavour needed Austria to appear as the aggressor because French support depended on a defensive war. So Piedmont mobilized near the border and provoked Vienna. Austria issued an ultimatum. Cavour rejected it. War came in 1859. French and Piedmontese armies fought Austria in northern Italy, and battles such as Magenta and Solferino shocked Europe with their bloodshed and scale. Lombardy was gained, but Napoleon III suddenly made peace with Austria, fearing Prussian intervention and the cost of a longer war. Cavour was furious, yet events had escaped the control of kings and ministers. In central Italy, Parma, Modena, Tuscany, and parts of the Papal States moved toward union with Piedmont. In exchange for French support, Nice and Savoy were ceded to France, a decision that enraged Garibaldi, who had been born in Nice. To him, Cavour had traded away part of the Italian soul. Then Garibaldi answered in the only language he trusted, action. In 1860, with barely more than 1,000 volunteers, he sailed south to Sicily. The expedition looked impossible. The Bourbon kingdom of the two Sicilies was large, old, and armed. But Sicily was restless, and Garibaldi's arrival turned rebellion into revolution. His red shirts fought, marched, improvised, and became a symbol greater than their numbers. Peasants, townspeople, and local rebels joined the rising. Garibaldi crossed from Sicily to the mainland, and the Bourbon regime collapsed faster than Europe expected. Naples fell. The South, long ruled apart from the North, was suddenly in the hands of a revolutionary soldier who claimed to act in the name of Italy. Cavour feared that Garibaldi might march on Rome and provoke France, which still protected the Pope. He also feared a Republican revolution that would destroy the monarchy's careful strategy. So Piedmontese troops moved south through the papal territories, while Garibaldi faced the most dramatic choice of his life. He could keep power, challenge Cavour, and risk civil war among patriots, or he could surrender his conquest to Victor Emmanuel II. At Tino, Garibaldi met the king and saluted him as King of Italy. It was one of those rare moments when personal ambition stepped aside before national myth. On March 17, 1861, the Kingdom of Italy was proclaimed under Victor Emmanuel II. After centuries of division, invasion, rivalry, and longing, Italy had become a country. But the map was still incomplete. Venetia remained under Austrian control. Rome remained under the Pope, protected by French soldiers. The new kingdom had a capital, a parliament, a king, and a flag, but it still lacked two of the places most central to the Italian imagination. The struggle continued. In 1866, Italy allied with Prussia during the Austro-Prussian War. Italian armies did not cover themselves in glory, suffering defeats on land and sea, but Prussia's victory forced Austria to give up Venetia, which was transferred to Italy. Venice, the old republic of canals and empire, entered the kingdom. Rome came later because world history again shifted the local fate of Italy. In 1870, the Franco-Prussian War broke out. Napoleon III needed his troops at home and withdrew the French garrison from Rome. The protection that had preserved papal temporal power disappeared. Italian forces entered through the breach at Porta Pia, and Rome was annexed. In 1871, Rome became the capital of Italy. The dream that had stirred poets, conspirators, soldiers, diplomats, exiles, and peasants had finally taken political form. Yet the making of a state did not instantly make a nation. The new Italy inherited deep wounds. The North had more industry, roads, and administrative experience. The South carried poverty, resentment, and memories of conquest. Many peasants did not understand the new government except as another distant authority demanding taxes and military service. The Catholic Church rejected the loss of Rome and told many believers to distrust the new state. Parliament struggled with division, corruption, factionalism, and the challenge of governing people who had never before been governed together. One famous cry of the era captured the problem. Now that Italy had been made, Italians had to be made. That task was harder than any battle. Schools had to teach a common language. Railways had to connect regions separated by mountains and history. Soldiers from different provinces had to learn to serve under one flag. Laws had to be standardized. Local identities had to coexist with national loyalty. The Risorgimento was therefore not a clean miracle, but a human story full of contradiction. It was born from poets and soldiers, from secret societies and royal armies, from republican dreams and monarchical compromise, from foreign help and national pride. Mazzini gave Italians a sacred vision, but his republic did not come. Cavour built the diplomatic road to unity, but he did not live to see Rome become the capital. Garibaldi conquered the South in the name of freedom, then handed it to a king. Victor Emmanuel became the symbol of unity, though millions of his subjects still felt more local than national. Austria lost its grip because European power shifted. France helped Italy, then blocked Rome, then withdrew because Prussia threatened Paris. Every step of Italian unification was tied to the greater machinery of world history. The French Revolution, Napoleon's Empire, the Congress of Vienna, the revolutions of 1848, the Crimean War, the rise of Prussia, the fall of the Second French Empire, and the changing balance of power in Europe. Italy became a country not because one man willed it, but because many forces collided at the right moment. It was a nation imagined before it was built, fought for before it was agreed upon, and declared before it was fully completed. Its story reminds us that countries are not born only from maps. They are born from memory, language, hunger, humiliation, ambition, sacrifice, and the belief that people divided by history can still choose a shared future. The Italy that emerged in the 19th century was imperfect, restless, and unfinished, but it had crossed the great threshold. The peninsula that had once been a battlefield for others now had a voice of its own. The city-states, duchies, kingdoms, and papal lands had not vanished from memory, but they had been gathered into a larger name. And from that moment forward, whenever Italians looked at the Alps, the plains of Lombardy, the canals of Venice, the hills of Tuscany, the streets of Rome, the ports of Naples, and the fields of Sicily, they could begin to imagine them not as scattered fragments of a broken past, but as pieces of one country still learning how to become itself.